Hi and welcome in Exacto Group. I would like to invite you to our organization, present you our colleagues, our teams, departments. I would like to show you who we are and what we do, so please follow me. We have started our journey in 2010.
Forniamo i nostri prodotti a più di 30 paesi.
Wir liefern unsere Produkte an 4000 Autohäuser.
Nous avons fourni plus d'un million de solutions.
Cooperation with OEMs and over 100 NSCs.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the third, and which is not so nice, but it's the last remarketing expert track of this year. But there's a lot coming in the next few weeks as well, so you will hear all about this a bit later. So, my name is Johan Verbois, and I will be your host for today. You just saw two of our sponsors of today, being Exacto Group and PCA, but we'll have two others as well, which I'm glad to mention: Cars to Click and DAT Group. Why is it important? Well, it's the way we can keep on offering you this for free today. What we'll do today, and here you see what's still coming. So we'll have a remarketing forum, will be a bit later this year, but you will hear a bit more of this today. And I will just very quickly highlight to you what we have today in this expert track. It's all about data-driven remarketing. And we'll have some experts. I think we've got three complete new faces on here. So we'll see later. So we got McKinsey, we've got Lauman as well. We've got GP Cars and Cars to Click. But first of all, I would like to invite our first expert that will join me here on stage is David Baudouins from Nexus Communication Fleet Europe. David, welcome.
Hello, Johan.
Yeah.
Hello, Johan. Let me check that I'm sitting in the visual. Nice to see you again, Johan.
Yeah.
And great that we're able to gather again today for this third remarketing extract of 2023. I'm joining today for indeed a word of explanation regarding what is upcoming. Because these virtual events are fantastic, but I know that a lot of people are very enthusiastic thinking about the event which we will be organizing later this year in Lisbon. But prior to that, I also want to underline for those partners, those followers, what kind of media opportunities still are being planned, or let's say content elements which will be shared dedicated to remarketing, which is also relevant for this audience so that you can follow up upon the last updates. So regarding media opportunities, I think we have a slide which supports that. Yeah, okay. So regarding the first initiative which is upcoming would be a a newsletter which is scheduled, and almost simultaneously there we should have an ebook which is being released. And the ebook will have a similar focus than the program of today, quite similar. The ebook allows also lead generation for the partners and goes in depth upon different of the topics we will discuss today. So October 24th, the ebook, and then newsletters on the 31st and the 7th of December. And as you see, ebooks remain available on our Fleet Europe Knowledge Center, and you can download it as well through the QR code, which you see on this screen.
I think we need to check just for a moment whether we see the slides. I don't know if anyone can comment on this. I think we got a challenge that the slide isn't on the screen as well. Yes, indeed. Thanks, Jacob. I think the presentation is not visible so far. So on the ebook, so we had the last ebook out, and we will share certainly the QR code as well. But there's another one coming on 24th of October.
That's correct.
Okay. And it's about the same topic. Now I see the slides. Okay, we see the slides coming. Shall we go? No, I don't think we need to go back because that's an introduction. I think the next one is going to be a more important one, I think.
Correct. So in any case, if wished, we can still send you over the recordings regarding the this presentation. So the Remarketing Forum, probably the main event of the year for the international remarketing industry. You will see here that we already have an impressive lineup of partners which will be joining us, Johan. It's not only from a partnership perspective, it will be a success, but we are expecting really also a record-breaking edition in terms of participants. So this will be the place to be for the international remarketing community. So we'll have the platinum partners, the gold partners, and besides that, we also have different entities supporting us at the jury, also to ensure that we do a great job on the awards. And the awards is on the next slide. So you'll see that on these slides, we do have QR codes which are mentioned. It's to enable also direct access for registration. It gives you access to the general page on the Fleet Europe Days website. As you might know, the Remarketing Forum and Awards is a part of the Fleet Europe Days, and you'll find your way there to or register, or even more important for today to announce, because we're near to the deadline, it's to apply. So you being the suppliers within the remarketing ecosystem, it is crucial if you think that you have an innovative product or service to apply before upcoming Monday end of business. So Monday evening will be the deadline. So you will find your way, as we just said, through this QR code on the website, which directs you to the website. Also in the chat, my colleagues have been so kind to put the URL link so that you can also find your way through this through that way. We have 2 awards where the jury will play an important role. So it's the first one is the Known Remarketing Innovation Award, which is enabled and supported also by CARA, the association, which you probably all know. And the other one, which is a new award, which is the Remarketing Car Manufacturer Award, and which is supported by Exacto. So important for you, if you also have acquaintances, relationships, etc., at OEMs, at dealerships, at NSCs from the OM, then they might be very interested to apply with their way of working or something they have been implementing over the last years to optimize all the remarketing related processes and business. Third but not least, a different process. There will again be a Hall of Fame award this year that is supported by Macadam, and that is a process which will start as of the moment that we have closed down the other award applications. So probably as of mid next week. Yeah. So 3 awards, 3 things to look forward to. We will have a very nice evening on the 22nd of November in Lisbon, in the Congress Center, where we will have a ceremony move to present who these winners are. And on top of that, an important thing to mention, and you'll see that in the promotion upcoming, it is our 10th edition of the Remarketing Forum this year.
Okay.
So also that shows the, let's say, the interest which we have been able to build through the years through this remarketing community.
I've hosted the first one. I hope you don't show any pictures of 10 years ago, because I don't think that'll look good. No,
we'll need to be there
after
to
10
see
years.
that.
Okay, good.
All right, good. So I think that for me at this stage, that's it. I haven't been in the picture fully, but that is fine. No, it is fine. That's fine. Most of the people might know me. And you'll see another me at the event. And now I'll leave the floor to you.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Have a nice one,
David.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now if there are any questions, if you would like to get any information, or if you just want to get someone to take contact with you, add it in the chat as well if there's anything unclear, and we will take contact with you. So now that brings us to the first speaker, which is Benjamin from McKinsey, for a very interesting information. I saw Benjamin at the Global Fleet Conference, which was I think in May, and they were talking about residual value forecasting. Now, the challenge is, how do you forecast residual values in this very volatile landscape? He's gonna come. He's not yet here for a second. He's gonna come in. We're trying to get a connection through, but it's working. Okay. So, Benjamin, welcome on the forum today on the expert track. So I think you've got a very interesting part for this, because there are quite some people that almost think that it's not feasible anymore to forecast RVs in this very volatile world. So I'm going to leave the floor to you and hope you can support our community here today.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you very much for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. My name is Benjamin Schauner. I'm working for McKinsey, and I specialize in everything around used car data and remarketing. So we engage in this area of work for a variety of players in the field, including banks, OEMs, and big fleet management companies. And especially since a lot of our customers are asking us right now what the future is holding in terms of residual values, Johan asked me to share some thoughts on this to this crew. I don't see anybody from the audience, so if there are any questions, just type them in the chat and let Johan know. I'll try to make this session as brief as possible so that we leave sufficient room for Q&A in the end, to make sure that I'm not saying anything boring to the entire audience. So if we jump right into page 3 of the presentation, can see here, if we think about residual values, there are basically 3 questions that we're asking. Why should we think about an increasing risk in residual values, and why is this topic actually important? What can we do in order to mitigate risk exposure? And last but not least, how can we address this topic? And the question here is probably very different for different types of players that operate in the field. So if we start with the how on this and jump to page 5 real quickly, the why, sorry. The reason why I believe this topic is on everybody's plate right now is because the exposure to residual values will significantly increase from 2020 to 2030. So you see that basically back in 2020, there were roughly 390 billion residual value exposure, of which 25% was already in the green combustion area, so anything around hybrids and EVs. And not only will the baseline increase, so the risk exposure, because we see a higher penetration in terms of leasing, subscription models, and so on. So the professional companies will see higher exposure to residual value risks, but also the share of green combustion engines in that mix will significantly increase. So based on our analysis, more than half of the residual value exposure in 2030, so in 7 years from now, will come from anything that is hybrid or EVs. Now that comes along with a high level of uncertainty because, as you all know, this comes with a lot of new model introductions where we don't have a lot of historicity on how the market will perceive these models, how residuals will behave, how second-hand car market customers will behave in buying and owning used cars. So there's a lot of uncertainty around residual values of these new EVs. If we go to the next page, please. You see here that this is coupled, of course, with a super high uncertainty in the macro environment. You see that on the left-hand side, as you probably all have experienced over the past couple of years through COVID and the supply crisis, the general second-hand car market vehicles have increased price level to an unprecedented level. We see now that this is dropping. It's not dropping on across all models and across all countries, but the question is this going down back to a normal, or are we seeing a new plateau that is being reached now overall in the used car development? And this comes along with, of course, a couple of factors that change, so to say, the environment overall that we operate in. So the interest rate reversals, supply acceleration, demand shocks. So people think not only twice, but 10 times before buying a new or used car. So the macro environment is changing significantly. And we also see the OEM internal challenges. So the entire new model generations, but also the sales model is completely being changed for many players in the field, driven by players entering that are actually doing a direct sales model. So with that along, a lot of things change in the whole way how companies sell cars today. So if we go to the next page, this is particularly important as we talk about EVs, right? So the couple of uncertainties around that is that the demand for EVs is decreasing and an oversupply with longer holding days are seen in the market. I'm sure a couple of players that are also entering or participating here today see that on many models are not being sold as quickly anymore as during the supply crisis. The EV used car market is seeing a hit as far as we can tell in terms of price levels. So the question is how is that affected by the new model generations, and a lot of uncertainty around, okay, well, how will the ICE ban play out overall? You know, we've seen the announcement of EU leaving in 35 on the combustion engine and the UK even earlier. Of course, the question remains, will this persist? And if so, how? Also with other legislative changes that are affecting EV adoption further and further. So why does it matter? We see on the next page, the answer is, of course, it matters to different people in the ecosystem in a different way, so to say. So the OEM will see increase in remarketing values. They need to balance the uncertainties around RVs. So do we want to subsidize residual values in order to offer more attractive new vehicle leasing rates? And how is this playing out with our new sales approach? We see that the banking and leasing providers will be challenged with an increase of the D2C effort of the OEMs. And we will see that a new business opportunity that many players are thinking about is offering new car leasing as well. In the fleet management area, we see a lot of consolidation of players, and we see changes in the portfolio, of course. So a lot of changes happening here at the same time. And the corporate customers are questioning them, or asking themselves, how will we change the financing models in the future? So the question is, how can we now respond to that challenge? And if we just go to page 15 real quickly, I think that summarizes it well. So what we do, and when we consult players in the ecosystem, so going, I think, 5 more pages down, we basically say, okay, if we want to manage RVs successfully, there's a certain way of doing that in-house in a substantiated fashion. And there are 3 ingredients to that. Yeah? We believe that proper residual value management in the future basically relies on 4 building blocks. And I don't know who's driving the presentation, maybe it's not, but we can skip a couple of pages further down. So the first building block is, how do we gather sufficient data points that allow us to make significant or good forecasts in the future on the right level of granularity? And you all know that in a couple of in all the countries in Europe, there are different data providers out there. Question is, how do we pair external data with internal data? What is the right way to choose? So there's an important question around, how do we get the data that we need? Now, the second topic is, and if we can go 4 pages further down, I think exactly here. So what methods do we apply in order to forecast from the past into the future? And I think to Johan's question in the very beginning is, how can we actually predict the future based on the past if everything is changing? So, of course, the topic of machine learning algorithms that we apply in order to forecast can only predict as much. But of course, there's the challenge to do the best that you can. The third is, okay, how do we apply all this information and the forecasts in a user-friendly way? So how do we build a good front end to do that? And last but not least, if we have the best forecast on any value, how do we access that in a friendly way so that we take the right decisions with all the right involved stakeholders in a clear governance path going forward? And basically, this offers opportunities for the entire ecosystem if it's done right, that we see on the next slide. So, of course, it helps us in terms of portfolio management. Where do we want to grow? What share of our portfolio is at risk? We can also select better configurations of vehicles because we know how certain optional equipments or trim lines determine the residual values. We can optimize the reselling of the vehicle due to better pricing, but as well as better timing of the recalls and the timing of the remarketing moment. We can use it, of course, for the financing players for better lease rate and dynamic leasing durations. It's an important topic for provisioning. And last but not least, of course, we can gain optimal or better results in remarketing if we have a better residual value forecasting mechanism. So for players who are doing that right, or who are applying best practices in this field, we have seen that on average 400 to 800 euros per car can be improved if residual value management is done right at the right moment. So how do we typically do that? And maybe we go to 2 pages down. There are a lot of different degrees of professionalism that we see in the industry, and that also where probably all the participants in this meeting are on different stages, right? So we come from a past that was like where experts made a judgment into the future, right? So we come from something that is an expert-based assessment where basically on a couple of information points from today, they made judgments into the future. We always suggest a fully data-driven approach that takes out the gut feel and builds everything on current market data and advanced algorithms and machine learning technology. So what it takes is collecting and analyzing current market data, constantly reviewing the portfolio and comparing it to market momentum, taking risks where they are needed and being conscious about them, and then developing a multitude of remarketing channels to basically optimize the returns that we see for the entire portfolio. I would like to end here in order to ultimately leave sufficient room for any questions that we might have and opening up the debate. I think I'm not entirely sure what the audience is currently interested in. So back to Johan, I'm happy to take any questions or afterwards.
Yeah, I think we will certainly expand the questions at the end, but maybe taking one of the questions that came in is that I think in the past, and I think it's still applied quite a lot, forecasting residual values was a lot based on historical data only. So it's basically a performance that a lease company or an OEM achieved in the past that was used to put on future vehicles almost. And I think indeed a few slides ago you were showing that you a lot work with current data, current market data. So is that a new way or a new system? Is historical data or historical performance then not appropriate anymore? Because I know that some of the lease companies always say, look, if we take our own data, then it shows our own strengths as well. I don't know if you can comment on that, Benjamin.
Yeah, so 3 considerations. First, internal and external data. So we believe that the market data should always found the basics for what is happening in the market, enriching it with internal data to reflect the specificities of the current channel architecture that you have. It certainly helps. So the two should be combined. And then the question on historic versus future data. We see that the most important determinant for future residual value development is the vehicle-specific past development of that exact vehicle, right? So it stays true that you need the historic data, but you also need to be very sensitive about the most recent market developments on that driver, plus the forecast and the input on macroeconomic variables that are expected to drive that. Yeah, so we will never be able to build a forecasting algorithm without historic data, but it needs to be more recent and more frequent and more granular than many of the approaches that have been taken in the past.
Well, I think the other one that just came in, I think, supports a bit the fact that regardless if it's based on data or thing, all of the external factors are very hard to forecast. If one OEM starts to do complete different things by pushing, then of course they pull everything down. Maybe the economics we can still forecast reasonably well, like oil prices or interest rates and everything. But there are some automotive things like maybe taxation and all of those elements which are, well, I would not say not to forecast, but I think a lot of people would use those words. Do you agree completely or half of it, or?
Yeah, so we always do a forecast that is the kind of consensus trajectory of everything stays more or less equal, apart from the economic variables that you can forecast and make estimates on. but then we typically work with scenarios, right? So what happens if? And there are a lot of things that need to be considered, right? So in the legal area, what happens if a country suddenly increases CO2 taxes or tightens legislation on cities and who can enter? How does that reflect EVs? Yeah. So we typically build a grid of what happens if scenarios and try to look for evidence in the past where something similar has happened. Yeah? And you see, for example, like you can isolate instances where EV adoption was further pushed, like in the front runner markets in the Nordics, for example, and then say, okay, if the UK were to introduce legislation and subsidies similar to Norway, what might happen there? Yeah, and then it's not necessarily anymore a fully automated decision making and forecasting algorithm. It founds the basics or sets the foundation, but is then overlaid with certain scenarios that you can construct and evaluate. And that is also then how you can take expert-based informed judgments on what you believe to be the most likely scenario that would happen. And of course, then again, like complete black swan scenarios can never be forecasted, right? So nobody would have predicted COVID, or nobody would have predicted complete supply crisis.
So I think your advice is certainly, or if I understood well, the way you work is to create scenarios so that your customers can take their own let's say calculated decisions on what scenario they believe is to their beliefs, or whether they want to take a bit more risk or less, then they can take a certain scenario.
Yes, absolutely. So we say continuation of the trend. We believe residual values of a certain vehicle would be put to 80% of OLP or whatever. If a certain scenario happens, it might be 2 percentage points higher or lower, depending on our assessment. And then management can take a decision whether they believe that this is a likely scenario or not. And you can sort of say, based on that, take decisions that need to be taken in light of risk.
Yeah, I think it's an okay. No, I think there's an interesting comment here, which of course is a bit specific. That people who forecast RVs don't put their own money. I think that's not completely true. I understand the point. Of course, if you're an RV setter external, then of course you don't take the risk. But of course, if you see risk divisions of lease companies, they forecast RVs and they put their own money. I would not like to calculate big lease companies. They miss with 2 percentage points, and you multiply this with a few 100,000 vehicles a year. That's a lot of money. But I understand your point, JV. I don't know exactly who it is because it's the same abbreviation as I would use, but certainly not my point. There are more JVs than myself. Okay, I would like to thank you, Benjamin, and we would
on that, Johan, just 1 second.
Yeah.
So our belief is that those companies that put their money where the RV is, so to say, if they have a sufficient exposure to it, they should be building this capability in-house. Yeah, and because first you don't want to buy, so to say, a black box of somebody else where you are not able to see what is in. And second, you want to build and experiment exactly with those scenarios and tailor it to your internal data. So to the point of the comment, we say that exactly if I had a lot of money in the game, I wouldn't rely on any third-party provider telling me this is the value that you should bet your money on, but build the capabilities in-house, And of course, that only is a valuable option if you're sufficient in size in order to do that. Otherwise, you need to live with that uncertainty to some degree.
No, I think good point. So thanks a lot. We invite you, of course, back at the end for other remaining items, and of course, we are happy that you then also get back to what other experts have shown. Thanks. So that was good. I would now like to invite two speakers, Jan Willem Seder from GB Cars and Jeffrey van Rijswijk from Lauman. Welcome. We could start speaking Dutch, but I don't think we're going to do that. Very happy to have you here. I think, I don't know exactly, but I think it was more than a year and a half ago that we also had a kind of case study on this, how to do data-driven pricing in the market. We had a BMW dealer group at that point of time, I think a Pala group. So happy to again look at some real case study or a kind of implementation, how data-driven you can have it within a big group like Lauman. And I think Jeffrey and also Jan Willem, I think probably you need to explain a bit of history of what you do and who you are, because I think that can be interesting for the audience. So I leave the floor to you.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much, Johan. Jeffrey, may I ask you to first introduce yourself and Lauman? You are mute, Jeffrey.
No, I'm not muted anymore, so I'm gonna introduce myself. Thank you, Jan Willem. My name is Jeffrey van Rijswijk. I'm 32 years old. I live in a small place just below Rotterdam. My working experience at Lauman is now going for over a year or 4, working specifically in the occasion business unit, where I'm responsible for everything that has to do with change, data, and development. In our Lauman company, we separate run and change in a way that we combine them, but also set them apart, for which the run is like the daily business and the change is more everything that has to do with the future, with improvements and transformations like that. So I think that's a little introduction on myself.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. My name is Jan Willem Seder. I'm one of the founders of JP Cars, together with my brother Peter. We founded the company in 2016. Reason why we founded the company, by the way, he's the smartest of at home. He's an actuary. We founded the company in 2016 because we both had to buy a car. And we basically got introduced in this wonderful world of used cars. My background also always have been in sales. Worked for an American software company. The reason why we founded the company is because, like I already said, we had to buy a car. The intransparency, the complexity, a lot of manual effort, included emotion in determining real-time pricing of used cars, was basically the start of JP Cars. 7 years later, we are with a team of 25 colleagues. Many of them are econometrists, computer scientists, data scientists, and we deliver real-time market information, real-time, complete, reliable, actionable, and also independent market information. We started with the Netherlands in 2016. We faced some hyper growth. We grew 100% year over year till today. We launched in Belgium at the beginning of this year, and Q4 of this year onwards, we will also launch Germany, France, and the rest of Europe in 2024. 85% of the largest dealerships in the Netherlands are customer. We are also heavily investing in finance and leasing companies. We have one of the largest Tesla leasing company as a customer as well, but also a leasing company with $1 billion plus portfolio. And in Belgium, as one of the examples, Dieter is also a customer there. So hyper growth and the international expansion are the key focus areas for the future. Jeffrey.
Yeah, then I'll take it from here for Lauman Occasions. In the past 3 to 4 years, we built a great backend organization for the occasion business unit. In total, we sell over 20,000 units each year, business to consumer. We also do around 30,000 business to business transactions each year, so around 50,000 in total. This is a concept that's pretty new within the occasion market. Totally data driven, fully focused on really tight processes, lean, and everything that has to do with a maximum amount of automation and data in total. That's the way we also learned JP Cars. We were introduced by them in 2019, I guess it was. It was just slightly before I started at the Lauman Group. Because it is a great organization that has a lot of data that we can use in our processes, on which we elaborate later on in this presentation a little bit more. For now, I think the main part to understand is that we are a backend organization facilitating and accelerating performance on the 60 plus stores that we have. So we are not from our business unit selling the cars directly to the consumers, but we're facilitating everything that has to do with selling the best cars in the least amount of time with maximum value to the clients.
All right, perfect. So, of course, I'm one of the founders of JP Cars. But if I ignore the technology and the company, obviously, what we all know is there are many market developments. McKinsey already mentioned a couple of them and the impact on residual values. But as an example, increasing interest rates, consolidation of dealer groups, new Chinese suppliers, transparency, private lease, governance policies, emotion, competition, many developments which impact in the end real time or pricing in general, but also supply and demand ratios in the markets. We have over 249 million passenger cars in Europe, which makes this a super interesting market. Because if you multiply that with a couple of thousands of euros, we are looking with all of us at a European market of over 6,500 billion euros. All these developments obviously impact the market, and what you need. Well, from our perspective, first of all, before we start with anything towards the future and future determining the future value of used cars, is first of all we need to have real-time, complete, applicable, and also transparent information of today, right? What we've seen in the market before we introduced JP Cars to the market in the Netherlands is that we've seen that it was already quite hard to determine the real-time price of a used car today. Given all these developments, what we heard from our customers is obviously you want to make better and faster decisions than the rest, and you basically want to be ahead of the curve. For that, like already mentioned, you need real-time data, complete data, applicable data, in order to be able to calculate current and future values, and maybe even more important, the marketability of used cars. And with marketability, we mean the ratio between supply and demand. Because the ratio between supply and demand in the end will also determine the current and the future value of cars. The most important thing we would like to achieve in the following years is basically, if you make a comparison to all the stock indices, like the London Stock Exchange, New York Stock Exchange, etc., is to build, let's say, a Bloomberg terminal for the automotive industry, where you can see real-time, actionable, complete information of residual values, and also project that data towards the future, so you can also have future values of used cars. which allows our customers to make those better and faster decisions. If we project this this information, and Jeffrey will give you many examples from how they use it from day to day. But if you project this to a day-to-day case, and in this particular case to dealerships, first of all, you need to identify which cars do you want to buy, right? What we've seen in the market a lot is that it is a supply focused market, let's say a push market. But basically, as a dealership, you want to know which cars do I want to buy, which cars have the highest demand, the lowest supply, by the way, so which cars are the most interesting for a particular market. Then if you have that theoretical question from the market, then obviously you want to know, where can I buy it, right? Where can we source those cars to sell them in that particular market? Once we've sourced them and once we've bought them, then we have to recondition them, we have to prepare them to sell. And once we have completed those first 3 steps, you also want to know, where do you want to sell it, right? You might have many locations, you might have many areas where you want to sell that car and where that car will optimize your selling price. Once that car is being allocated to a particular location, obviously you also have to manage it, right? And whether it's a stock or a fleet from a leasing company or a finance stock from a banking perspective, right? You need to manage those cars. And obviously, last but not least, you want to sell the car. Jeffrey, may I ask you to walk us through the following steps from a Lauman perspective?
Yeah, so I will try to give you some insights in the challenges that we had in our business, or sometimes have in our business, in which we use the JP cars applications and the data foremost. I will do this step by step. So I'll start with the identify part. The main challenges that we had in the beginning, before using the JP market tools that they provide, is that there is a real demand versus the personal field of view and preference. I think in general, the automotive business is a pretty traditional business with traditional people, traditional decision making. So the thing that we saw is that it's mainly based on emotional decisions and personal views of preference, that some people had some experience with great yellow cars. They always sell great, so they're only going to buy yellow cars. And the thing that we have is, when you have 60 plus stores and you want to sell 20,000 plus cars each year and want to grow year by year by year, you need to have a different perspective on that. So what we saw in that type of area, it's some questions like which cars not to buy, which cars to exclude, so to say. But we're making the transitions right now more to what to search for. What to exclude is also pretty traditional. That means some type of cars you won't gonna buy because they won't sell for enough margin, or they won't sell quick enough, or there's just no demand for it. But now we're gonna make a prioritized list in which we say, if we want to buy each week 250 cars, which car should be our number 1 car and which car should be our number 2 car. And in that case, the JP market tool is really showing us an overall view on the total demand, which makes it way better to make the right decisions which cars to buy, so to say. You want to elaborate more on that, Jan Willem? Or do you say, great story?
No, I think perfect. Maybe after our presentations, there might be several questions. So I would say, please proceed.
Okay, then I go to the second step and the challenges we had there. When it's more about sourcing, so buying the cars, we have a couple of challenges. Like, there are a lot of cars available. There's huge amounts of data. And when you've got a team of international buyers from around 10 to 15 persons, you should make the data compact and filter it for them. There's also a great challenge in unreliable data from sellers, not specifically in the Netherlands, but more when you go with a broader view to Europe. There are a lot of countries in which the cars are not advertised in the right way, not with all the data that you need to make a good decision whether the car is the best car to buy or not to buy it. And Jan-Willem, you just mentioned in the decision making thing about the best decisions and making them as fast as possible. And I think that's exactly the third challenge that we saw, that is finding the gems before other people do. When you have a tool that can find any car in Europe and filter them out, which cars are the best cars, and prioritize them from 1 to a million, and only focusing on the first, the second, and the third car, makes it possible to finding the gems before others do. Because that is the way you're going to outperform the market, making better decisions and making decisions faster than others do that. In which also the fourth challenge is an important one, is that the traditional and emotional decision making in buying cars had to change. It cannot be a future kind of state in which everybody makes their own emotional decisions based on their own personal field of view and preference, but it should be a data-driven and process-oriented kind of decision making that we need there, in which the JP purchase tooling helps us a lot. In that case, I can elaborate a little bit more on what we built. Jan-Willem mentioned that they provide us with the Bloomberg terminal. So to say, they deliver the data to us, and we had to do our thing with the data to be successful. So what we do is every car around Europe, we scrape, we use it as a scraper, so an online scraper, in which every car transfers to a kind of box. We filter that box out, we enhance the data that's in that box, so that we can extract the best purchase leads from that box. And we do that on everything that has to do with portals. So all advertisement portals we scrape each day with this tooling, and that's a great way to use the great amount of data and filter out only the best purchase leads for our team. And in the end, that leads to the result that we are at Lauman, the Netherlands' greatest buyer of occasions from Europe.
So maybe, Jeffrey, maybe I want to add one thing. So I think overall, like what you said is, and I think that's also like a little bit an overall conclusion. What we've seen so far, and no matter whether it's about dealerships or leasing companies, it's a change from being reactive, right? Like, okay, I get this car being offered by a third party. Do I want to buy it or do I not want to buy it? Or we are facing the end of a leasing term of a group of cars. What should we do with it? Should we try to extend leasing contracts? Do we bring it to an auction company, etc., etc.? It has all to do with a shift from reactive decision making to, I guess, proactive decision making. You want to be in control based on this reliable and complete data in order to make these proactive decisions, and not like vice versa, where you are being confronted with particular situation, acting too late, and making not optimal decisions around those topics.
Yes, I think exactly that's what it is. In the occasion world, it's not anymore about selling the most cars. It's not anymore about making the most money per car, but I think it's mostly about being able to optimize the money you earn with each car each day. So in that case, you have to be proactive, have to not be reactive anymore, shift from emotional decision making to better and faster decisions with the use of data. Then for the fourth step in this process, this allocation of the cars. You all can imagine, if you have 60 plus stores, it's quite important to set each car at the best store, at the best location, where the demand is. Whether there are more black cars on a store, whether there's more demand for smaller cars because it's a more rural area, or just bigger cars in a rural area. It can be anything, but we should be able to identify at which stores the demand is highest for the specific car that we want to sell. So that's exactly what the challenge were. Where's the demand? And we also saw that there are huge differences in performance per car and store. So what we did is we really used the JP cars tooling, but also the reports that they are sending each week, in which we see which store performs better on which kind of cars. We don't have the illusion that we have people in some stores that work well and in other that they don't work well. It all has to do with performing the right tools for our people at the stores and performing the right cars for them, so that the leads will sell. Simply as that. And then maybe for the next step, manage the cars. The challenges are pretty obvious in that field of area. It's like we have many cars. The prices of cars change daily. There's much more volatility in this world than it has been in the past years. So if you want to be at the right price for every car every day, you should make use of standard processes and a great amount of data to make your decisions on. Also, a big challenge that we had was alignment within and across stores, because in a traditional world where everybody was used to making decisions on their own per location, per store, which were all based on more or less emotional decision making. That's a huge shift when you go from emotional decision making towards a more data-driven and process-oriented way of decision making. It was quite a challenge to get the people to accept that change. I think the main takeaway in that field of area is to do it together. Don't create a world in which you have a back-end organization and a store which are fighting every day, but make sure that they are winning together. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. The back-end organization and the stores are really winning together based on data and based on all the kind of expertise that they have in our stores themselves. And in the end, with the result, optimizing stock days versus margin. I think that's one of the main things that we try to do with the JP cars data now more and more and more. It's not about which car sells the quickest or which car delivers the most margin at the end of the way, but it's like optimizing those two variables in making the most money based on your investment that you're doing.
All right. So overall, basically in summary, what we from JP Cars, we see ourselves as basically the stock exchange, right? We deliver the real-time, actual, complete data. Lauman, from that perspective, is the analyst, right? Together between a human world and the tech world. It's exactly the same in the stock world, where the Bloomberg terminal, where the stock exchange delivers the real-time, complete and actionable data, and the analyst makes a decision on how many and when. Overall, what we also see as one big transformation is that the shift from the static residual value tables from the past to dynamic real-time information. It's the market, it's the demand from the market which in the end determines supply and demand, and which should be across Europe, basically the overcapacities and the undercapacities should be aligned with each other. So overall, no matter what your decision will be, is from our perspective, you need that real-time, complete and actionable market information in order to be successful as a dealership or as a leasing company. Well, thank you very much. This was our presentation. So I'm not sure whether there are any questions, Johan.
Thanks, Jan. Well, we have got one question in here, but if you're okay, we'll handle this afterwards.
Sure.
Then we'll have it for the session at the end, because I think we've got our third expert waiting, is anxiously would love to talk. And thanks, Jan, Willem, and Jeffrey. We will see you back. Hi, Brian.
Hi there. How are you? Everything good?
How are you? From where are you calling? From Portugal?
From Lisbon, Portugal, yes.
Lisbon, Portugal again. Okay, good. Well, as you see, Cars to Click has been a very loyal sponsor this year. Thanks for that. And what's interesting is he always comes back with something fresh, something new. So I'm very much looking forward, Brian, to what you have now come up with Cars to transport, after Cars to Click, Cars to Exchange, Cars to View, Cars to Transport. So it's all yours, Brian.
Okay, thank you very much. And today I'm going to present something new. As Johan said, we try to come up with new ways of working and trying to help you improve your business. Just very quickly, Brian Madsen, for those who don't know me, I'm Danish. I now live in Portugal. I'm one of the owners of the group called AI Maria Invest. The company is mostly known as Cars to Click, which is cross-border trading and winner of the Fleet Europe Award in 2020, and the Cars to View that was the winner of Fleet Europe Award in 2022. Now, today I'm going to talk about transportation, because this is the next thing we have in line after geo-pricing and the solutions we've been building. And what we want to do, and because we are buying and selling cars cross-border, then we are subject to the problems like everybody else in terms of transportation, handling documents, documenting everything. I heard the other day that more than 10%, one said 19% of the new vehicles that are being transported actually arrive with damages, and we see a lot of issues here. So we decided a few years ago we want to change this, and today I'm happy to present a solution that will be launched in a few months, available for everybody. So let's just start with the whole remarketing. So the way we see remarketing is about using artificial intelligence and data to optimize the process that we have and we work with. So already today, the way we work is that we call her Maria, AI Maria. She will have the buyer profile of each of the buyers that are in our database, automatically notify them when there's vehicles that are interesting for them. If someone's interested in BMWs, then this is what they will get. So no standard catalogs or anything. Everything is AI driven. The buyers can automatically update their profile and so on and so on. Now, what happens then in the process is that as soon as someone has decided to buy a vehicle, then the vehicle, of course, is marked as sold. Maria can actually handle the whole process, even negotiate with the buyer. So that's where we are now. But after that, logistics have to kick in, right? And here we still see a lot of challenge in the way that we are working. We are working in the way everybody else are working with transportation. So we decided to automate this. And that means that today when Maria sees someone has bought a car, as soon as this is locked in the system, she will calculate the route for this vehicle and put it together with other vehicles. So we will put together one whole truck of vehicles that will be picked up at one or several locations and delivered at other locations. And all this is driven by AI. Before that, we had people sitting and doing that, and of course, that takes a long time. But as we are growing and doing a lot more cars than we did before, then it was not possible to scale the way we are doing this with people. So we needed to automate this. So what we've done is simply decided to check this the process and change it. So nothing strange in what we have here. The vehicles are ready for pickup. Of course, that needs to be checked by the person who's responsible for this. The planning about when we can pick up the cars, what kind of routes we're going to have, which transport company we're going to use, the whole pickup planning and coordination. And of course, then the transport, then delivery needed to be coordinated, and the claims, if so on, and then the CMRs. So this is the normal process of how people are handling this. What we see here is there's a lot of challenges that are putting a stick in the wheel, so to say, and that is the coordination and the information from the seller, making sure that the vehicle is ready, that it's at the right location, and so on and so on. That is something that takes a lot of time. Sometimes, or often, there's a mistake in the information. Someone doesn't reply, or they reply, yes, everything is correct, and then turns out it's not. So there's a lot of mistakes happening on the seller side to coordinate this. Then when it comes to booking with the transportation and coordination between us in this case, or whoever is managing this, and the seller and the transport company, is something that is quite challenging. Negotiation as well, and deciding which transport company you want to pick for this specific delivery. And then, of course, communication about not ready, the conditions, and the extras. One of the things that you see when you pick up a vehicle is that there's supposed to be winter tires. The winter tires are not there, or the condition of the car is different than what you expected. Things like this, or the car is not ready. It can be several different things. And all that takes time, right? Then transportation. Today, tracking of a transport company is not really possible, or it's not being done at least. It's possible, but so we don't really know where the truck is, when we think it will arrive, and so on. And the same thing when it comes to the delivery of the vehicle with the buyer, making sure that the communication is there, that the buyer confirm the condition of the car, the buyer checks that the extras are there, the trunk cover, and so on and so on. And then claim handling, documentation of claims. Customers have a tendency to take a little bit longer than they are supposed to when it comes to claims, difficulty in documenting it, and the whole process is very often more or less manually handled by both the buyer and the company. And also the transportation companies have a tendency to write on the CMR that I picked up a car with damages and I'm delivering a car with damages, and then they kind of get away from the whole claim process. And the last but not least, CMR is paper, right? It's a piece of paper that has to be signed. There's lead time for this. Sometimes you can't read what is on it, and it takes time before you actually get it, which complicates the whole VAT and export documentation for the whole process. So when we look at the process, then we're like, there's a lot of challenges here. There's a lot of things that can be changed. So what we decided to do is that, say, okay, the process is still the same. We're not going to change the process. What we want to do is that we want to see how much AI can take over and help us and our team to be faster. So what we did is, when the car is being sold, the AI will communicate directly with the seller, and the seller will then digitally confirm that the car is ready, the pickup date is there, and then the AI will communicate and create an offer. So after the AI had put together a truck of 9 or 7 or however cars it calculates, depending on if it's an EV that is heavier, if it's a small Opel Corsa, it exactly knows how many vehicles can be on each truck, can put this together and create a planning route for the transport company. It can then send this information or post it online to a few transport companies that will have been assigned for driving on this route, maybe Paris to Copenhagen or whatever. But only those few will see it. They can then place a bid on it's not an auction, but they can make a bid. The AI already said, I think this truck should cost 2,000 euros and we expect it to be picked up in 5 days and delivered in 3 days and so on. Then the transport company can say, I want 2,100 and I can pick it up on Friday and I will deliver it on Monday or whatever they do. Then this can then be presented to the team that then will get a ranking of these are the best possible transport. There will even be a ranking of the transport company itself. So if a transport company has created some problems in the past, then they will be blocked or they will be marked or something like that. So that means that the whole planning process is a lot faster. That then gives us into the next part with the pickup and the transport and delivery, where we also want to digitalize this process. And this might just be the biggest part. I mean, to drive workflows with AI is something that we have done since 2019. So this is something that we're used to. But the digitalization of pickup, transport, and delivery is brand new. And this is where we think this is really an innovative solution that we are bringing forward now. And the whole documentation, claim handling, and CMRs. So the way we do this is that, like I said, the AI will calculate the route, put it online, bid auction for the companies that are allowed to do the transport. They'll do the planning, all the communication. They will give alerts if something is not working. If the pickup, if the car is supposed to be ready, it's not ready, they will give alerts so we can rearrange the whole process. So everything that is done manually can basically be done by AI. And for us, this changes everything and the way we can handle the first part of the process of the transport, the logistic part. Now, when it comes to the digitization of the pickup, transport, and delivery, then it is about digital checklists, condition reports, and timestamps, and also alert. Timestamps means, of course, that we can know exactly when the transport company is there, because as soon as they start working in the solution, we will know that right now they are about to pick up a vehicle. It can also be alerts. A transport company is delayed or picked it up earlier, or there was something wrong in the checklist. The car was supposed to have winter tires. It did not have winter tires, and so on. And the same when then we have the transport the cars being delivered. Then the same again, we do the checklist of the extras, the winter tires, and so on. AI condition report, timestamps, and again alerts. That means that now we know when we picked up the car, we know when the car has been delivered, and we know if there's anything that is different from what it should be. And the AI will notify us if there's anything that needs our attention. Meaning we don't need to wait for the customer to react and say, hey, I got the car now, I didn't have winter tires, and then there's a claim. This will already be detected in the second that this is handled. The last thing about documentation, there will be a condition report when we pick the car up. When we deliver the car, we will have a condition comparison. So if there's anything different, we will know. And then last but not least, we will have a digital CMR. This is something that changed a lot for us since we're buying including VAT in countries and then selling ex-VAT. So we need to be 100% perfect on our documentation when it comes to the CMR and that the cars have been exported. And that's where we think digitalization is the right way forward. Now, just very quickly, what is happening here, just because of time now. The AI stands in the middle, and the AI will do everything that needs to be done. The way this really works is that the AI will send a code to the transportation company. The transportation company will use the code to open up the vehicle information, and they will see this is a Polestar 2, so on, and this is what needs to be there. Then they simply click, yes, there's winter tires, the trunk cover, second key, and also registration documents or whatever. There can be several different things, of course. And then they click after this on the video. And the phone, either a phone or a tablet or whatever, opens up, and then the AI will guide the person to walk around the car and identify the condition and document and store this condition in the back end. Now, as soon as the car then is being delivered, exactly the same things happen, right? During the transportation, we will track the location of the transport company. That means that we will know the car was being picked up Friday at 2 o'clock, and right now it's somewhere in the north of Germany, and it looks like that it's likely to be delivered on time. So the AI will actually keep track on the route of the vehicle, and if there's anything that needs attention, then it will alert the management team, and they can then check what is happening. The same thing when the car is delivered, the code is sent to the buyer. The buyer will open the solution, walk around the car, and do the same thing, a video. So that means that we will now have two videos, one from when the car was picked up and one from when it was delivered. And the AI will now see that, oh, there's a scratch on the front bumper, and mark that and alert us about this right away. And only when this is closed and signed off, the vehicle will be, the transport company will get confirmation that the process has been finalized, and also with the information about if there's any damages that we have notified during the period of the transport. Everything is available for transport companies online. It's also available for the buyers of the vehicles and also the sellers, of course. Here they can see each of their cars, follow them in real time, what is happening, where the car is located, if there's anything that went wrong, if there's any damages, anything that's different from what we expected, then that's available. And again, everything documented in real time by the transport company, by the buyer, and monitored by all of us inside here. So very quickly finalizing here, Digitalization of booking and ordering, transportation is part of this, coordination with sellers and transporters, monitoring pickup and delivery, using the AI to track everything, damage recognition and comparing condition. It's faster and more secure process for claim handling and digital CMI. So that was everything for me for this time.
Just maybe a quick question from my side in order to position this. So if you're launching this at a point of time, at a certain point of time, so you will say it's available for sellers, for buyers, transporters. So is it a kind of like all the different type of service providers, for example, suppliers or customers, they can have access and they can order things, or what will be the setup?
So whenever we build something, we always start by building something that we need ourselves. We think this is something that needed, so this is designed for the process we have. And it's our AI, as soon as someone buys a car through Cars2Click, then the AI starts this process. The idea is that we will launch this first internally for all our customers, that when buyers and sellers, we will run this for a while until we have, whenever you do something, you design something with your best knowledge and attention, but you might want to do some changes going forward. So we'll run this with our customers. We're already running tests with it now, but we're going to launch it with our customers. We're going to see for a few months, 3 to 6 months, if there's anything we want to change. And then the solution will become available for everybody. So if you buy a car on BCA and you want to use this solution, then you can use it as well.
Okay, that makes it
not that we have a partnership with BCA, but if you can use the solution, if you want to buy cars wherever you want, then this will become a public solution.
Good. Okay, good. Brian, thanks a lot, and everyone feel free to ask questions. And we now invite the other experts back for the Q&A. And I'm sure that we can use Brian again a bit to give a bit of a view on what has been discussed before. But I first would like to invite Marcella specifically, maybe to quickly introduce you to the audience because you haven't been on screen yet. And maybe at once, maybe give your view on all of this, what has been discussed before. And I think volatility is really the word where I think the whole audience thinks always like, yeah, that's all good, but how do we handle this in current circumstances, in this volatile world? I think sometimes we are all still looking back maybe 5 years and before, where everything was so easy, where almost automotive, we were always complaining that automotive was slow, but now we understand that that was not a bad position to be in because everything was stable. But I think currently, I don't think we see this ever coming again. So, Marcella, welcome.
Thank you, and hello everybody. Thank you for having me in the panel. So just to introduce myself quickly, my professional background is centered in international business development, mainly in AI solutions and automotive consulting. And right now with the AT group, I'm focusing on fleet and mobility providers. And since the AT, we pride ourselves for our data-driven remarketing strategies, I figured that was a good point to be here. So thank you for having us. And to answer your question, we could talk about this for hours. It's the volatility, starting with that, let's say, already since the pandemic started, let's say, things like the pandemic, the chip shortage, the war in Ukraine, and all of these things, this is nothing that we can control, like you mentioned, also like Alex mentioned before. So I think it's important to have a mix of preventive and reactive solutions when we're talking about remarketing, residual values, and so on. So to go back to what Brian was just saying right now with the AI solutions, for example, this is something that we also like to foment, let's say, in the market, having a mix of AI-driven solutions with subjects like telematic data, so combining dynamic data and static values. is something that we can really implement in our processes in order to have this preventive approach, whether it's in any part of the remarketing process. And then there's so much that we can do as experts in the field. Let's say nobody has this magic 8 ball that will tell you how the future will come, but we can have a pulse in the industry in general, having experts that are constantly analyzing the market. But again, it's a little bit complicated. The volatility of the market right now is extremely volatile. Will be redundant, whether it's because of the low consumption, like the market has decreased consumption a lot, I believe, because of the pandemic. We had a DAT report a year ago, that 15% of the car owners pushed their next purchase until next year. But out of those, only 7%, for example, bought a new car after the pandemic. So these are things that it's hard to keep track, and it's important to have constant market analysis about this in order to better have a better understanding of it. And I think also our colleagues before mentioned the right car for the right market. So this is something also that it's important to keep in mind. We cannot buy, like you said, like only yellow cars because maybe in Spain they buy good, but it's something that is so abstract that it's a little bit hard to keep track. And then, I mean, like I said, we could go in this forever. Like the income have decreased or will not increase as much as previous years with inflation and all of these things. It's something that it's very volatile. So.
Now, I think if we have a look at some one of the comments, I think we read between the lines a bit. Yeah, but in this current world, how can IT really do the job for us? Now, I'm not saying that IT will do the job for us, but is it combined, like, for example, IT or AI, they really analyze everything and make a kind of a proposal, and we still have another eye on this to check? I'm not sure if it can be 100% AI driven, and maybe that's a good one for Ryan to get back to everything we've said before about forecasting, market data, pricing, because you're also very deep in all of this, Brian.
Yeah. So 2 things to what you said here. First of all, when we developed geo-pricing, this was a tool that we needed in order to understand the price in each market. So I think it's very, very important that you understand what price point is at any given time in each market. And we're in the B2B world, so to have a tool where you can see the price without the local taxes is very important, because otherwise it's very difficult to compare a car from Germany to one in Denmark and so on and so on. So this is one thing, you really need to have the right tool and a European tool so you know what to do. We know that a little more than 40% of the vehicles that we analyze can be sold with a higher price in another country. It's of course different from time to time, and like Benjamin said, if there's new legislation coming, taxes or whatever, then this change, the dynamics change in the market. It's completely impossible for people to keep track on everything that goes on. So the only way to keep track on things and make the right decisions is that you need to have some kind of data-driven solution that is there. Now, go back to what Benjamin talked about also in the beginning. If you base this on historical data, there's different kind of models, right? So in the beginning, let's go back before 2020, you could basically have a pricing model that would look into what happened the last 6 months and then what is in the market right now, and then make some kind of prediction of what's happened. We all know that 2020 finished a little bit different than we expected when 2020 started, right? And even 21 and somehow 22 as well. So the models that have to be used today have to be so much more advanced, because you cannot just take data and start making a few calculations. And again, this is so difficult for a person to do. You need to understand the balance between supply and demand. You need to understand what is going on with EVs right now. We just suddenly saw a complete stop for buying EVs and things. We see that Tesla went out, they changed their pricing. And when Tesla changed their price on new car pricing, it doesn't have an effect on the used car price in the market the first 1 to 2 months. Right? It takes a time. But what you see is that suddenly the B2B professionals, they will stop buying because they get afraid. So we see things that happens in the market after something. It's like always a consequence of a reason, right? With AI, we can do two things. We can give information to the AI and say, hey, Tesla just reduced their price on all the new vehicles. What do you think will happen with the competitors? And then we can put some scenarios there, and then the AI can give us some very complex future scenarios on all kinds of models, EVs in general, specific models, and stuff like that. It is impossible to do this as a person or even as a team, right? So we have had to, since we started in 2019, right, almost 5 years now, we have constantly to train our AI in different ways of looking at the pricing. 2020, 22 turned everything upside down. Suddenly we saw prices going up instead of going down, things like this. But right now, we just a few weeks ago updated our, put a new structure inside our AI because things are changing again. So you need this, but again, there are many different ways of working with data, and you need to, when you start looking at the different models, I won't say ours is the best, of course we think so, but when you look into this, you need to understand how do they come to the result that they're coming to. Why do they say that this vehicle will have the value of 20,000? Is it based on historical data? Is it based on actual data right now, or is there some kind of split between this? Is there some AI prediction inside it? AI can sometimes be a complete black box where you don't really understand what goes on there. It's just a presentation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, very conclusion is you have to use a solution like that because you can't do it as a person. There are too many factors you need to pick in, but you need to be very careful about which model you are using.
Yeah. Yep. Now I think it's maybe a good time to take the question from Silvio here. Jan Willem, I think it was more towards you, but maybe afterwards we can certainly go to Jeffrey as well. The very clear question here is, where does the data come from? And I think it's a bit general that you could reply for the industry in general, because we got a few plays like JP Cars and Indicata and Radar and Autobase, but also the fact dealer groups get better organized in lead management. So is there a risk that when they don't advertise anymore on big portals that there is an issue with data quality?
Yeah, definitely, Johan. So you have to dive a little bit into the technology, but from a high level perspective, what we do with our technology is we gather the advertised cars from the individual website. And this is a significant difference between what many others do using car portals. If you gather the data from the individual website, you are always complete regarding your information data set. Given the fact that what we've seen, for example, in Belgium and in Germany, for example, in Belgium, some of the largest dealerships over there, they do not advertise their cars anymore on the big car portals. Or, for example, in Germany, where some of the largest dealerships only advertise partially their stock on those portals. So if you want to be accurate and if you want to be complete, and I mean with complete is not like only, for example, either auction data or a couple of portals, which you then extrapolate to the full market. But if you want to be complete, and if you believe that in the end, the retail price of an individual car is in the end the selling price to the consumer, right? And all the rest is a result of that end price. You need to be complete. And there's only one way, and that's, it's been a big headache for us to get our technology, let's say, that advanced. But nowadays, it allows us to structure massive amounts of data, which we gather from the individual websites. So by doing that, we deliver that complete data to our customers. And if you want to, maybe to add to that, so maybe based on incomplete data, in somehow you might be able to determine the selling price or the business to business price of a used car. But where it becomes super complex is when you want to determine the supply and demand ratios of a particular market. If you do not want to extrapolate incomplete data to determine supply and demand ratios or marketability of individual cars, you need to have a full data set. And that means that you need to gather the data from each individual supplier in order to be able to give your clients an accurate and reliable overview of supply and demand ratios per country.
Okay, thanks for the. I think Jeffrey, this data quality, I think in turn, you also have had your challenges convincing people that they could rely on this data probably. And I think you mentioned before that you need to do this as a team in order to come to a kind of more confidence. I think this is a very interesting element because implementing this, I think, is a challenge. Can you elaborate a bit on what were exactly the challenges? What did you do? Because, of course, someone in the past, people had a position like, I know the market, I know what to buy, when, where. But, of course, that completely changes now.
Yes, those kind of sentences are exactly what we heard while implementing this. I think there are a couple of factors really important in making this successful, and one of the main things about that is start small. So get a group of people together which truly believe in it, which also have a lot of business expertise, and combine that with all the data knowledge from the supplier, in this case JP Cars, and set them together. What we saw is that when we started small and it became more and more successful, and sometimes it wasn't successful, but we tried new things and made other things successful. Then when you do that at one location, at one store, the other 59 stores are always looking towards that one store. And when that store is becoming more and more and more successful, it's not that you're pushing the implementation, but they're requesting the implementation from that one store. They all want to share in that success that you're putting together there. I think that's one of the main things. Also, you need to leave some room for failure. Not everything is going to be successful right off the start. Sometimes things need time. Sometimes you make a wrong turn. You need to get back to the right track and fix some things. And also, I think the third one is, again, make sure you win together. Data is one part. All the business knowledge and expertise that is in the heads of the people working in the automotive environment for years and years and years. When you combine those two together, that's going to make the success. It's not only the data, it's not only the people, it's those two combined.
Okay. Now, I think for by McKinsey, I think you're probably often or more often working with huge companies, I can say. So how does is this challenge the same in big leasing companies or OEMs or captive lease companies?
Before I answer that question, Johan, I would like to add one comment to what Brian said in terms of volatility. So
feel free.
It is very true that market prices have become more volatile for used cars. But if you look at other industries, volatility is still comparably low, right? So if you think that cars are a premium grade of steel that is traded liquid, like in a financial market, this is a completely stable market, right? Also, if you look at the stock market. So the level of volatility in terms of prices compared to other asset classes is zero in automotive, yeah? So in that sense, if we broaden the horizon a little bit towards methodologies that have been used in other industries, I think it's relatively simple to deal with this problem. Now, on the other hand, the asset class is, of course, a lot less volatile, a lot less liquid, right? Because you cannot trade it in the same way as a stock, but from a methodological point of view, it's not like we can learn a lot from financial traders and so on in other classes and see how they used computer algorithms to deal with uncertainty and these kind of things, right? I know it's new to the automotive industry to some extent, but I think the way prices are set for airline tickets or whatever, it's a lot more volatile and reactive to supply-demand patterns. Just as one comment. So to your other question, Johan. So big companies, of course, have the capabilities in-house to deal with these issues and the so to say the competencies and resources to build their own solutions, right? So whereas other players that are relatively small, they need to rely on third-party providers in order to get this done. So similar to solutions that Jan Willem described, where they subscribe to a solution and use that to optimize their business. And that's also what we recommend or test in the very beginning when we engage in any kind of, let's say, data and analytics engagement. We see, okay, what level of value creation in the data and analytics value stream do you actually want to do in-house, and where do you want to rely on specialized providers? And it can be done in everything from going completely downstream, right? So in terms of web harvesting and integrating from portals and all these kind of things, which is a bit of a commoditized service, so to say, that you can outsource relatively easily. But then there comes like, do you want to have your own data scientists in-house that are able to build algorithms and machine learning models? Because it's a source of competitive advantage in the future. So there, I think, is a big difference between large clients and customers that we typically engage in with projects and smaller players that try to be competitive in the market.
Okay, great. Maybe we can go to the question from your book there on scraping or having a look at websites. We can get a clear idea about what is supply. Now, how do we gather a demand for data? I think it's a bit, if I can, and challenge me here, because I'm going to try and explain it in a very few words. It's basically vehicles that are available one day and aren't available anymore afterwards are assumed to be sold. And am I saying this completely wrong, Jan Willem?
No, you're not saying this wrong. This is I maybe want to add something to Benjamin's comment. I do believe, of course, there are always other markets which are more volatile. I don't want to say that the car market is similar to a stock market or to the oil market, but what we have seen in our data, given the fact that we monitor on every single 24-hour basis all different markets and giving all the developments of the recent 6 to 12 months, and given the fact that what we have seen so far today, that it's been for many customers and mostly prospects, super complex to determine the actual pricing of a car today and having an overview of what the supply and demand ratio is of each day. Because if a leasing company, or at the end of this year, right, Tesla Model 3, 5 years ago, we get a significant amount of new Model 3s on the market. That will have a significant impact on supply and demand ratios, right? And that's only a very obvious thing to happen in the following months. So it's not that super volatile as oil markets and stock markets, where we need, like, let's say, intraday trading or in trading in milliseconds. But on a daily or even on a weekly basis, this market is volatile, given the continuously changing supply and demand ratios, having a more, let's say, having more open markets, more connected markets. Then to your question, Johan, in answer to your question, yes. So it's not only crawling data, right? This is a super complex technology. The crawling part is like the easy part, right? That's what everyone can do. But where the complexity comes in is when you crawl data, you have to normalize the data, right? Because that BMW 3 Series has a different name in France than it has in Germany than it has in Italy. And it's been written slightly different, and all the let's say the subtypes of those cars are different. Then you have to analyze the data now, etc., etc. So it's a super complex process, and it's way more than only crawling data. Yeah, supply and demand ratios in our world are being determined based on the actual status of the market, given what is online advertised and what's being sold. And also in there are many triggers, because if a car is being put offline for 3 days and then it comes online again, then it will continuously calculate the stock days, etc., etc. So yeah, in our world, it's a matter of the retail, what's being advertised online, that's the supply, and the demand is what's being sold.
Okay, that's clear, I think. If anyone has any comments at any point of time or any other questions, feel free. I would like maybe to go back a bit to this RV forecasting. I think, Marcella, and I hope that you don't mind, I'm going to get back to the question from Yuri, who says, yeah, the people who forecast RVs don't really basically buy them, so they don't take their own risk, which is fair. But of course, everyone is just trying to be as close as possible. And of course, you're also forecasting RVs within the company, so I have to give you the word to try and justify what the group does, maybe.
Yeah, that's a fair question and a fair concern, to be honest. But I mean, I can only speak for DAT. We try to be the neutral data provider, not only because of the structure of our shareholders, which are the OEM, the body shop organizations that we have here in Germany, for example. So technically, our shareholders are also our clients. So it's on everybody's best interest to have the most transparent, neutral data that we can. So from that point of view, I can say that we put our money where our mouth is. That's why we do the business that we do. But it's fair. Like it's a complex topic. And then also, like, going back to what Jan was saying, like the residual values must have multiple sourcing. So whether it's market research, like we talked at the beginning of this, or transaction prices that we get directly from OEMs, for example, and then the web scanning, it has to be a combination of all of them, so we can have fair and most accurate representation of the values that we have in the market. And like you said, yeah, like the web scraping at the end of the day is like the easy part, but having a process that is standardized with a database that are standardized everywhere in every market. Starting, for example, with the VIN decoding, that way, by using the VIN and having a whole platform that has the same Europa code, for example, for us, which is our standardized denomination for the VINs. We know that the same Toyota in France is going to be, I don't know, like the Golf 8, our model will be the same. It's not the same, sorry, in France that it's in Germany. Maybe one comes with extra equipment or not. So this is the important part that we focus also our efforts to. And because of this standardization of data and processes, we know that we're getting the accurate data that we need for the residual value forecasting. And then again, for the web scraping, it's important to also have the specific locations. So geo pricing would be a way to put it, where we can know also, like maybe in Berlin the prices are different than in Munich for the same car. So it's also important to have that in mind when we're researching for the with the web scanners and the transaction prices.
Okay, great.
May I add something here?
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of residual values, this means we're already looking at something that someone already bought, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that we have done, and I know Alfonso, he's in the call here, and I hope he doesn't mind I'm sharing this with you, but together with Alfonso and Hertz, we have built this solution where we look at the time of purchase. So when you're looking at analyzing a potential buying for, they're buying thousands and thousands of vehicles, right? It's quite a complex process to know, is this vehicle good for me or not? Should I change something on this vehicle? Should I change color? Should I change specs? Should I have a smaller engine or bigger engine or whatever? So what we have done is we're taking the step further. So RVs are one thing, of course, you need to monitor that in pricing. But we actually have an AI-driven solution where you push a car to the AI and say, I want to buy this vehicle. This is the offer I have from the OEM or whatever. And then the AI will say, this is the holding cost you will have per month for this vehicle if you keep it for 6 or 12 or so on, based on the forecast module that's in there. But it will also say, and give you a recommendation, say, this vehicle you have here is manual. You should look into the automatic, because the automatic have a lower depreciation than, even though it's more expensive, it will have a lower depreciation per month than the manual one. So this is something that is making this RV analysis even more advanced, because you buy the right vehicles, right? You have a lower holding cost. And we had just yesterday, unfortunately, I had this funny example where both of us was 100% sure that he should go for, in this case, the automatic transmission for one vehicle. And the AI showed that, no, this is wrong. In this case, the manual version is actually the one that sells faster and keeps the price more stable in the market. So I think when we look at RVs, we tend to look at what happens in the future, but it's also about doing things right at the beginning, like Jan and Jeffrey was in on. It's really about buying the right product at the right time and make sure that the combination is right, so you don't end up buying a vehicle for using in Spain where you don't need heated seats, but in order to get the highest price for it, you need to add heated seats so you can sell it for the highest price in Denmark or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks. Yeah, good input. Just maybe before I go over to the last question, which is always that everyone gives a kind of advice to the audience in the area you are working in. But before doing that, I'm intrigued by the fact that, Jeffrey, in your function title, there is something about change. What are the other change elements that you're working on, if it's possible to explain it maybe in the used car area? Are there other change aspects that you can share?
Yes, I can. Data is one of the things that we use with. So JP Cars is one of the main providers and preferred supplier of data, which we have an intensified relationship from the past on. Things that we do a lot within Lauman is centralize activities. What we try to do is build a back-end organization that really facilitates and accelerates the performance on our stores. So everything that can be centralized in terms of really good processes, everything that has to do with data, but also IT systems that can facilitate the stores in an optimum way. Those are all kind of aspects that we try to get to the back-end organization. So what we see is we try to make an organization in which a centralized organization manage all the things that the stores don't want anything to do with it, so that the stores can really focus on the client. We have to be process oriented, data oriented, I think from a value chain perspective. And in that case, we just want to make sure that on the stores, they have the right tools, the right cars, and can focus mainly on the thing that they do best, and that is serving the client.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing. So as I explained, and as we always do, I just want to get a final remark, advice from our 5 experts. And maybe to do this a bit organized, we do it in alphabetical order so that Marcella can close off, I think. So I would like to go to Benjamin. Any piece of advice that you would like to give the audience in the area, what we've discussed today?
I think I would like to build on what Jeffrey just said for Lauman. In order to capture the opportunities that the more data-driven world offers. The biggest reason why organizations fail to capture that is because they do not change the organization and processes. You can have the best data in the world, the best forecasting algorithms in the world, and so on. If all your processes are not geared towards building on that, then you fail to capture those opportunities. And I think this thought of instilling change throughout all levels of the organization is crucial for many of the organizations that we serve when it comes to big data, machine learning, AI, and so on. So just as a fruit of thought, it's not always about the data and the model and the service you provide, but how do you make sure that people are willing, capable, and enabled to actually use this and focus on what is their task. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot. Then I go move over to the south of Europe. Brian?
Yes. Well, I think it's very clear what I think about this. I think, like I said, everybody needs to start using some kind of solution, and you need to dig into which one fits your business model the best. If you are a car dealer, then you need one kind of solution that can help you select the right cars. If you are an OEM or rent and leasing company, you have different priorities. And there are several solutions. So, we have one, you mentioned some others as well. And it's very important to get started. One of the biggest challenges everybody has when it goes into this is to align the data that they have in-house with external data. And make sure that these two data sets, they align in some way and can be used together. It's quite a challenging job, so the sooner you get started, the better. I think that would be my recommendation.
Thanks. Thank you. There's someone's dog who is getting a bit anxious as well, so
it's
probably
mine, and I will stop.
it's yours. No problem. No problem. That's the world we are in today online. Jan Willem.
Yeah, so based on what we've seen, we've done over 100 implementations at the largest and the smallest dealerships, leasing companies. This is not about technology alone. It is basically about transformation because it's a total different way of working. It's all about change. So my advice would be, if you believe obviously in data, that's the first step. Second of all, find those champions within your organization, and also basically, as an addition to what Jeffrey just said, start small, find your champions, find a small group of champions, make them successful, and based on results and success, that definitely will not be unnoticed, and others are. It will be way easier for others within your company to adapt the same way of working. So that will be my advice.
Thanks, Jan Willem. Jeffrey?
Yes, my advice would be not to do everything yourself. So focus on the things that you're good at as an organization, that makes in which you differentiate yourself from others. But don't try to do everything yourself. Don't try to be a data company. Don't try to be any other company, but just mention that you're in a bigger ecosystem, and focus on the things that you make a difference in, and get the right partners around you to be successful within that ecosystem.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Final, Marcella.
So I think we all said already more or less the same, but I feel like as the industry tends to overestimate the change that occurs in the next 2 years, let's say, but underestimate the change in the next 10. And even though it's not the most volatile industry, like we talked a little bit ago, it's still quite hard to predict what's coming. So in order to get like your ducks in line, you have to combine multiple sources, like we all said here right now. Get as much information and try to be as reactive as possible, whether you're using web scanners, telematic data, AI systems, and things like that, in order to be as much prepared as you can to be prepared for what's coming. So I think it's a little bit of what we said, like we're all in the same boat going the same way. So it's important to diversify the basket, let's say, and get as ready as we can with all the data that we have, which I hope most people believe in data, like you said, Jan. Let's hope it's the case. So yeah, I think like be as preventive as possible, I think would be my advice.
Okay, so I would like to thank you for your time today, Marcella, Brian, Benjamin, Jeffrey, Jan, Willem, and then I'm just gonna close off this session with a few final slides. Thanks a lot. Okay, I think just 2 slides to come. First of all, I of course wanna, I think it's just 1 slide, even better. Thank again the sponsors, Cars2Click, DAT, the BCA, and Exacto. And you will see on the slide as well, there's a QR code for the remarketing forum. So just scan the QR code and you'll get to the page, get more information. You need to be at this, I'm not so sure, but I think it could be a nice party because it's the 10th year we do the remarketing forum. So thanks a lot for your attention, and see you in Lisbon. Thank you.
Hi and welcome in Exacto Group. I would like to invite you to our organization, present you our colleagues, our teams, departments. I would like to show you who we are and what we do, so please follow me.
We have started our journey in 2010.
Forniamo i nostri prodotti a più di 30 paesi.
Wir liefern unsere Produkte an 4000 Autohäuser.
Nous avons fourni plus d'1 million de solutions.
Cooperation with OEMs and over 100 NSCs.